Green Arrow! He is one of DC Comics' oldest superheroes, and nowadays he's become one of the most popular, probably in large part because of the Arrow TV show on the CW. I like it a lot, and you know what? It's only fair that if I covered Flash last week, we should probably cover Green Arrow this week. But, how to decide which run to cover? He's had a lot of really different interpretations over the years. We've got the Mike Grell Longbow Hunters comics. We've got Kevin Smith's reboot. We've got the New 52 version. There's just all sorts of very different runs. If only there was some way to hone in on which run to cover. My name is Chris. After 5 minutes of hell, I have come back to my video channel to review more comics. But my old way of choosing comics to cover wasn't enough. To select a new issue, I must become someone else. I must become something else. Alright, so that sucked. Look, it went right through. So that's the comic I'll be reviewing, is the Green Lantern Green Arrow. And it just went into the brush and I cannot find my bolts. I lost it. So awesome, time to review some comics. There's the target. By the way, I couldn't find any of my bolts after I used them. They shot right through the target, or I dropped them in the woods. I lost all of them. But the first one hit nice and true. This says Green Lantern Green Arrow, in case you can't read it very well. Some of the other options were Kevin Smith's run, the Longbow Hunters, New 52, but I hit pretty close to center. It was an 80-pound draw, and the thing just punched right through the target. But you know what? Forget all that. I'm so excited to cover this run. In 1970, Green Arrow wasn't really being used, and Green Lantern needed something new to it. So writer Denny O'Neil teamed up with Neil Adams, and they added Green Arrow to Green Lantern's comic. It became the Green Lantern Green Arrow comic. And it was basically just their trips across the US looking at real life issues that America was dealing with at the time. I mean, we're talking the civil rights movement, workers' rights, all sorts of stuff, drugs, environmentalism. They tackled some really real topics, and they did it in a pretty effective way for its time. It's really impressive. Neil Adams is at the beginning of his career. He'd done X-Men, now he's doing this. Great artist, great artist. Denny O'Neil, I mean, there was the seminal issue where Green Arrow's ward, Speedy, becomes a heroin addict. That was a pretty bold move for comics at the time to tackle something that real world. Green Lantern during this time gets a new substitute Green Lantern. There was always like two of them. This one was John Stewart, the first black Green Lantern. There was a lot of progressive stuff. I mean, it's still of its time, as we'll see when we read a story, but it's very progressive, and therefore I love it. It's really, really cool. Anyway, before we begin reading, let's go over some of the tropes that you could reasonably expect to see in any issue of Green Lantern Green Arrow. Up-to-the-minute references of then-current civil rights movements or people. Green Lantern and Green Arrow being roughly equal threats to the bad guys, even though they should be vastly different power levels. Green Arrow caring about the common man more than the law. Green Lantern fist-fighting instead of using his powers. Neil Adams drawing the heroes contorted in some extreme poses. Dynamic new panel layouts. 70s slang lingo. Trick arrows. One of the Guardians learning what it means to be human. Green Arrow calling Black Canary Bird Lady. Racism. A speech about a cause like the environment or workers' rights. Green Lantern reciting his oath and thinking about what it really means. Alright, we're going to read issue 77 of Green Lantern Green Arrow. Let's see how many of these tropes we can hit. Green Lantern and Green Arrow have decided to drive across America so that Green Lantern can really see what the average citizen in America is dealing with. Green Arrow has pledged to put him in touch with that. And they begin driving in a truck across America. Also, one of the Guardians, the sort of elderly council that gives Green Lantern his powers, has decided to live among them as a human to see if this mission is in fact on the up and up, if it's valuable, if it's needed, and he's disguised as a human. So they're going through this pickup truck through the woods. They're shot at by some hillbillies. Green Lantern and Green Arrow jump out of the cars, ditch their clothes, their costumes are on underneath, and begin fighting the hillbillies. Now for Green Arrow, no big deal. He shoots guns out of people's hands with his bow and arrow. Green Lantern, he should be able to basically round up all these guys with one fell swoop with his power ring. Instead, the power sort of fails. These stories would bend over backwards a little bit to sort of depower Green Lantern and make them equals during fights. You know what, I'm going to hang it over here, about right there. No matter what threat they were facing, both heroes were needed. Sometimes they did fight supervillain stuff, and all of a sudden, Green Arrow had a lot more trick arrows. And other times, Green Lantern's power ring just wasn't working so well. It's going to be really hard talking about these two heroes, Green Arrow, Green Lantern. If I make a mistake, I hope you'll forgive me. The heroes subdue the hillbillies and ask for some answers out of them. The lead hillbilly, we'll call him, is Jacob, and he explains that there's a man named Slapper Soames, pretty weird name, but whatever. Slapper Soames owns the mines, and these guys work in the mines because they say they don't know anything else. Fair enough, but Soames treats them really badly. He's got his own guards that, abuse the townspeople. He pays them very little wages. He's a real tyrant. But lately, one of the townspeople, a guy named Johnny, has become a really good guitarist, and he sings folk songs about what's going on, and it's sort of inspired a lot of these miners to stand up for themselves. And that's what they were trying to do here when they were shooting. They thought that Slapper Soames had hired some guys from the big city, and with their goofy costumes, I guess they don't know about superheroes. They just thought that they were from the city, and that's why they were shooting at them. It's interesting to note that on pages 4 and 5, there's a double-page spread with panels across it, and this probably isn't the first time that's been done, but it's new enough. Neil Adams did a lot of experimenting with panel structure for his whole career, and this is relatively early in his career, and he does some interesting things. This issue, not every page, but this 2-page spread is somewhat indicative, and I think that that's a trope. Dynamic layouts. Very good, clean storytelling. Very easy to read these books. Soames has had Johnny arrested, and what's more, somehow he's rigged the courtroom so that Johnny will actually get hanged tomorrow. So this group of miners wants to save him, and Green Arrow instantly is like, yeah, absolutely, we're going to help you out. What's interesting is that Green Lantern here is like, well, wait a minute. If Soames really is in charge, then, who are we to get involved? Green Arrow is like, are you out of your mind? This, just because you're in charge doesn't make you good. And he mentions people like Hitler and Genghis Khan. This series really cemented Green Arrow as a more liberal, or at least progressive, character. He cares way more about the common man than the law. And Green Lantern is a former military guy. Technically, he's still part of a military type organization in the Green Lantern Corps. So he's a little bit more rigid and by the book. And it's interesting seeing that these two friends have very different ideological ideas, but that they can find the common good. It's nice. Green Arrow cares more about the common man than about what the law says. Jacob brings Green Lantern and Green Arrow to the rest of the miners. They've formed an angry mob, and they're ready to attack Soames, his prison anyway, but it's up on a hill covered with all sorts of barbed wire and fortifications. Green Arrow's like, yeah, I don't think we're going to try a direct assault on this, but Jacob and the miners, not necessarily the brightest guys, maybe, or they're fired up. And they're like, no, we're going for it. Cut to inside, and Soames is sort of teasing Johnny. And what's interesting is he compares him to Bob Dylan. A mention of a real person in the civil rights movement. I think Bob Dylan's songs were really important at that time. In some ways it dates it, and in other ways it really grounds it in a way that not all comics were doing at the time. Later on this same page, we've got another trope. Pretty much every single issue of the comic, Green Lantern charges his ring and says his oath. I guess it was in case this was ever anybody's first comic. It was really driving home how his powers worked. But during this run in particular, every time he would say that oath, you'd go inside his thoughts and he'd think about, the righteousness of his cause, or, whatever Green Arrow was teaching him this week. I'll read this month's. I used to speak that oath with pride, with conviction, but now I'm not convinced of anything. The world isn't the black and white place I thought it was. Once, I might have fought for Soames, but Green Arrow has made me think that maybe authority isn't always right, and I don't know what is just. So that's a trope, the oath, and thinking about it. It may seem a little on the nose for now, but you have to get to where we are now somehow, and this is how. This was progressive and more grounded for its time. Jacob leads the miners up the hill, and Soames has fortified this jail in just an insane way. We're talking landmines and machine guns. So some of these miners are killed. Jacob dives out of the way. And while Green Arrow and Green Lantern weren't about to run up that hill with them, as soon as they see them being hurt, they join in the fight. And here's another trope real quick. A trick arrow from Green Arrow. Mostly he did use real arrows, but once to twice an issue he'd have a gimmick arrow. A trick arrow. He uses a smoke screen arrow to help them out. Green Lantern's power ring obviously makes short work of the threats. He steamrolls the landmines. He uses scissors to cut the barbed wire. And then, when he gets into the thick of the smoke from the smoke screen, he's surrounded by thugs with guns, and the Guardian telepathically tells him, oh, by the way, we've decided that your mission isn't quite the space mission that we originally gave you, so we're actually depowering your ring right now so that it can't protect you from lethal harm anymore. What? Great timing, guys. You might want to have told him that a day ago or something, even an hour ago. Oh my God, that's pretty ridiculous. And if we didn't already say that there were story elements to get these two heroes on the same level, we'd be hitting the trope again right now. But Green Lantern is a hero, and instead of getting scared by that warning, he decides, you know what? So what? I've still got my fists. By the way, his ring does still work. It doesn't not work, it just is somewhat depowered. But he could definitely take care of all these thugs easily with his ring. Instead, he fist fights them. That's a trope. Green Lantern has basically the most powerful weapon in the galaxy. It can create anything he imagines, and it will stay solid as long as he uses his willpower. And yet, he gets into fist fights all the time. Soames has his men shoot gas grenades into the field. And by the way, this is kind of weird. This isn't a trope. This is just weird. Soames's guards are apparently former Nazis that he broke out of a prison. What a bizarre backstory to add to them. This is like 1970, which means the war had been over for, 25 years? Oh my goodness. What a strange idea to just have these guys randomly be Nazis. It's not necessary. They could just be bad guys that are bought off. In the gas and smoke, a child wanders around confused. I don't know where she came from, but the Guardian guy just walks up and is like, here, I'll help you to safety. And then we go inside his thoughts. A strange feeling, an emotion, as this tiny earthling embraces me. Is this what it means to be human? That sort of Pinocchio-type trope, it'll always work. It worked with Data on Star Trek and Spock on Star Trek and probably some other guys on Star Trek. Anyway, here it is for the Guardian, learning humanity. Green Arrow pulls out another trick arrow, a bomb arrow, and he blasts away the gates. He also takes out the machine gun, but then a thug sneaks up behind him and knocks him out. Or at least it seemed that way. I guess Green Arrow was playing possum just so that he could get brought in front of Soames. He's thinking to himself like, okay, time for me to wake up. And he knocks out the main thug with a chair. For some reason, Soames has let Johnny out of prison, maybe so that he could have an excuse to kill him in the confusion. That part isn't really explained. Green Arrow seems to have the situation under control, but then he's punched in the back by Jacob. Turns out Jacob was a traitor all along, working for Soames. The goal was to rile up the miners, have them act up, do this before they could really organize. Soames is just trying to break their wills. You know, he figures he kills a few of them early on. They'll never think of rebelling again. Jacob's about to shoot Green Arrow when all of a sudden Green Lantern walks in, saves the day, and Johnny gets to punch Soames out. And that's the end of the story. There's a single caption that just says that the bullies were tried and convicted for their crimes. We don't get to see that, but whatever. They went to jail, problem solved, and Green Lantern and Green Arrow get back in their pickup truck to head their way across America, see some more adventures. 8 tropes. Kind of a lot. All right, this was a lot of fun. I love superheroes, but next week I'm going down to LA. I'm going to hit a new comic book store. I'm going to hang out with a friend. We're going to do something a little different. We're probably going to try something in the alternative comics field just for that week. And I hope you enjoy it. And until then, keep reading comics. Okay. So I was hoping to make my comic tropes video, and I've encountered a pack of deer. Hello, deer. Hello. No, go that way. I'm just gonna shoot a video here, so move along. Hello. Good deer. Good deer.
Mm-hmm.